Thank you guys for joining me today, being here. Really impressed with the type of students that we have here today. For the fact that you're in high school and you're already interested in learning like what's going on outside the bubble that we all live in, that's incredibly impressive. So I can tell you my peers and I, when we were in high school, we're still learning about MySpace, and we were really hooked on that. So this is really cool to have you guys here. So my organization is Educate to Envision. And so this is an organization that I started my senior year of college. So I had no clue at the time that I was going to start this nonprofit organization, right? So this is like a time in your life when you're still trying to decide, like, what am I actually going to do? Like, it's about time. I'm going to finish college. Like, the clock is ticking. I really should start making a decision now. So I was on a medical path. So I actually was majoring in human biology. I was taking EMT courses, and I was ready. Like, this is what I'm going to do, medical, here I go. I don't know anything about education nonprofits. Like, why would I? I've never even thought about it. But as many of you probably know or will find out, there's going to be a moment in your life, or maybe it's already happened, where you start to realize there's something that I'm good at, and I can tell that I'm really good at it. I haven't maybe explored it yet, but I think there's something that's calling me in a certain direction. And for me, that was a trip that I took. So I had always been interested in international issues. I knew that. I hadn't traveled that much. I didn't have a ton of money to buy tickets, but I knew and I would read about what's going on around the world. And so that intrigued me a lot. And I thought, one day when I do start to travel, I want to learn more about what's going on outside California. So I took a trip for 1 week. So it was one of those volunteer trips, which probably many of you, when you go to college, are going to be interested in signing up for, is taking a volunteer trip somewhere. And that's awesome. So I took a trip to Honduras, and I never imagined even going to Honduras, right? So people tell me, why did you choose Honduras? Well, I didn't really choose it. I kind of landed there, and it turns out that that would be the trip that decided what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And sometimes it happens that way, right? Sometimes you are already, in science courses, you're already, working maybe in an ambulance, and you decide, oh, wait, I'm going to start a nonprofit. So sometimes things happen in the way that you don't really plan. So my organization works in global poverty, right? So we work in education, but of course our focus is to eliminate poverty. So this word brings up maybe some images for you of homelessness, of people who are starving, people who are having diseases. But I want to actually hear from you guys, because when I was in college, this is actually the question that got me thinking about going on that trip to Honduras, that actually made me want to sign up, is because I felt I didn't really have a good idea of what this answer was. I knew it meant like you're probably poor, right? You don't have money, okay, poverty. But beyond that, what does it actually mean to be poor? So I want to ask you guys, I know we're just warming up here, from a few of you, tell me what you think this is. What do you think poverty is in your own words?
Financial struggle.
Okay. Money, financial struggle, lack of money. Okay. Don't be shy.
Maybe lack of the basic necessities for life.
Okay. So example, what's a basic necessity, would you say?
Just water, clothing, shelter.
Okay, water, shelter. Okay, so lack of things that you need to survive. Poverty, lack of things, okay?
Lack of sanitation.
Sanitation, okay, good. Having toilets is very important, right? I think we all agree. Okay, yes? Lack of education. Okay, education, sanitation, good.
Maybe not lack of education, but like lack of accessibility to education, or like accessibility to the things that you need.
Say more.
Like because of the place that you live in, or like the standards of your culture, you can't go to school, or you're like because your family doesn't have money, that's why you can't go to school.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
Like not accessibility to like the basic things that you need.
I like that too. Good. So now we're touching on two different categories of poverty. So we are touching on financial, physical, lack of money poverty. We talk about lack of just basic services, sanitation. And then we talk about, access. So what does access even mean, right? So access can be prevented by lack of money. Access can be prevented by just the cultural norms in your community, right? So there are also things that we can touch that mean that there's no poverty, so we can touch money, et cetera, touch the toilet. But you can't touch cultural values, right? So there are things above and below the surface that we're looking at. So that's really what got me excited, is that I don't know about those parts that you can't touch. So I wanted to learn more about that. So I went to Honduras for 1 week. And this is an actual photo of the backyard of one of our students. So they live in very rural, isolated areas, all farming villages. They earn money once a year when they sell their crops. So that's the only time that they have any source of income, is once a year. Often coffee, sugar, and what happens if that crop goes bad? Well, you just don't have any money that year, right? So a lot is dependent on the weather. So there's a lot out of your control when you're living in these areas. So one thing that you might notice, right, if you live here, is there a Target nearby? Is there, no, right? So there's nothing really within this area except you and your neighbors. So access to education, geographic positioning, location, right? So there's a lot of things that go into this. So the communities that we work in, we specifically select them because they've never had access to high school ever. So the communities that we work in, when we go there, we set up these high school programs. And why? Well, we find out a number of reasons of why it doesn't exist. So one, if you are living here with your family and you want to go to high school, it'll take you an average of 4 hours walking to get there, right? To get to your traditional high school. So what does that mean for you? If you're only earning money once a year, are you going to use that money that you're using for medicine, food, et cetera, to take a bus 4 hours, or to pay for accommodations when you get there because you might need to stay overnight if it gets too dark? School supplies, uniforms, plus all of that transportation. So number one, right, so that's the financial part, is that you don't have access to those means to even get to this place. And the roads are bad, so that's probably lack of government support because they're not building roads. So there's also those things. And thirdly is the cultural part. So maybe nobody in your community, which is often the case, has ever gone to high school, so you can tell it's not a priority for some people, right? So sometimes it's money, and usually, but also on top of that, it's just that, why am I going to go to school? Like, what is it going to benefit me for? Why do I need to do that? So my kids don't need to go because I don't see a benefit for them. Okay, so there's a lot of different reasons why education is not available. And in Honduras, especially, in these areas, over 80% of young people, 12 to 18 years old, just don't have access, so 80%. So what you see is that, so here's an example just of a family in one of the communities that we work in. So in these communities, what happens is that you have a big entering class of first grade, for example, right? So you have like 40 kids in first grade, that all looks wonderful. But you have in sixth grade only one student. So what's like happening in between, right? So why are all these kids coming into first grade? You have this huge dropout where there's only one kid leaving in sixth grade. So part of that we learned, that's a question that we asked ourselves. And a lot of that is just lack of motivation, right? So if you imagine yourselves, if sixth grade was the last stopping point for you, like, would you even graduate sixth grade? Like, would you even care to go that far if you knew that that was the last step for you and there was nothing after that? So what happens is a lack of motivation, a lack of belief that you can do more. So these are our students here. So what we decided to do is bring high school. We didn't know how yet, but we said, okay, we need to fill in this gap. There are all these kids here, tons of sixth graders in different areas, and nobody's doing anything afterwards. And that's a huge economic loss to the community. That's a huge, huge loss because now you're just repeating the cycle of poverty. So now that student that either finished sixth grade or didn't is going to have a child who 90% chances is going to do the exact same thing. They didn't finish sixth grade, or maybe they did, but there's still nothing for them to do. So when I was on my volunteer trip, these are the questions that I was asking, and I started to learn, well, it's nice that I'm here and I'm doing this trip and I'm trying to help, but nobody's talking about education. So we're going to this community as college students because it's poor, but why are they poor? And nobody really was talking about that, and that's why I was wondering, like, well, why aren't we? And yes, it's a tough issue, but it should be discussed, right? So we decided to start sending school supplies. So that's the first thing that we decided to do. Let's send everyone school supplies because we could tell that they didn't have any, right? So they couldn't afford school supplies. And then we started realizing, well, that's actually kind of a short-term solution. So sending school supplies is going to help them for maybe 6 months or so, right? But when those supplies run out, what's going to happen? And so supplies and notebooks and everything, so that's part of education, right? So that gets them in the classroom. So now they're in the classroom, but that doesn't actually touch on those cultural norms. That doesn't touch on the fact that people still might not prioritize education. And it doesn't touch on the fact that they're still not earning money so that they can afford education. So it's good, now they're literate, now they're learning math and reading and everything, but what's gonna happen is that we make this sustainable so that there's high school here forever without us having to always be there. So what makes education valuable? Just think about that for yourselves, right? So it's not just you sitting in a classroom hoping to memorize, this whole chapter and then take a test and then you're good to go, you graduate, right? So for you, education is very much a tool that you're using. I'm assuming for the people who have come to this conference, your education is much more than just sitting and taking exams. You're using your education because you want to improve the lives of your family, you want to improve the lives of the children that you'll have later on. So it's much deeper than just being in a classroom. And so what we noticed, as I said, on our trip was the most obvious things, right? So this is what you observe when you walk into a situation. And we talked about this, right? So what poverty means. So the tip of the iceberg, lack of school supplies. That's what I noticed right away, and that's why I thought it was the right answer, because I just saw visually these kids don't have what I'm used to having, what my peers have, so that must mean that they need it. So that was my assumption that I made, which I learned later. It's okay to fail, and I learned later that that's not actually the right long-term solution. We need to get them economically where they need to be. So these are the things that we just noticed, and it's not bad, but it's just that there's so much more. So for example, gender inequality. So can you fix gender inequality by giving everyone a backpack? Probably not, right? You're gonna help them for a little while, but you're still not gonna change the fact that girls are often married off to much older men by the time they're 12, 13 years old, because they're often a burden to their families after a while, right? I'm sure many of you know that as well, that it's one less mouth to feed, so you're a daughter, so you're gone. And we might never see you again because your husband's not gonna let you go to school. So that's something that we can't tackle by building a school, by giving pencils away. Low prioritization of education, we talked about that, right? The elders, so a lot of our students, it's sad, but they just don't have any support from their parents. And it's gradually changes for some of them, but some of them are just still very, no, like I don't support this. You can go, but I'm not gonna give you any money whatsoever to continue your education. You're completely on your own. And so that's something that is not gonna also be changed by just giving away things. Poor quality of education, of course, right? Low familial support, as I mentioned. And this one's very, very important that I want you guys, especially as the new generation, to think about is a culture of handouts, right? So we as people who want to make a difference in the world want to actually give those people that we want to help the power to change their own communities. So if we give and give and give, that's all good because it's our intentions are good, but we have to think 10 years down the road, if we keep doing that giving, they're gonna still need us 10 years down the road, right? So we're gonna have to be giving them pencils for 10 years, which I'll show you in a second. So how do we help this group? Let's pretend this is a group of students that we just met in wherever country you wanna think about. So how are we gonna help them? Well, like I said, so let's say everyone here teamed up and they gave one kid a pencil, right? And it's a brand new pencil, and they're happy for that, to have a pencil, and they're excited because now they get to write. Okay, so now it's the second quarter of school, and they've been using it all quarter, right? They're using it for everything, and it's getting shorter, okay? Third quarter, it's half the size it was before. So now we're like, okay, so they're still using it a lot, that's good, but it's getting to the point where fourth quarter, that's the last time they're gonna be able to use that pencil, right? So what happens then? So you're the one who gave it to them. What happens next year if for some reason you can't give them that pencil and they're relying on you? You gave them that pencil, they need you again. So now they need you to give them that same pencil. So what that does is it actually worsens the situation in a sense because now they need you. So now they're not empowered because they're relying on somebody to give them that. So that's what we want to avoid. So whatever you guys decide to do to make a difference, just remember that, right? You don't want to be needed. You want them to be able to do it on their own, right? We want to give them the tools to do it on their own, just like we have the knowledge to do. So if we were thinking how else we can help them, right? So building a school is a very popular option. It's not a bad thing. Of course, a lot of places need schools. But what we want to do before we jump into that, because that's another observation that we have, an assumption that they need this, so we're going to build this for them. Instead, let's think about, okay, if we were going to build them this school, are there teachers who are trained to actually teach in this school? Because what if we build it and nobody's trained to teach? It's going to sit there and become a closet, right? It's going to sit there and just like grow weeds around it. And if we build this school, okay, are there people who can maintain it? Is the culture of education or the prioritization of education so low that nobody's going to even use this school? So these are all things that we need to be curious about, because good intentions are great and they make us excited and we want to just go and do something. Just like I brought like 100 backpacks that first trip because I was just excited. I just wanted to do something. But without asking ourselves these other questions about what happens when I drop off these backpacks? Like, does it improve their lives? That's the questions that we should ask. So if you want to sponsor a student, right? So everybody has heard about sponsoring a student to go to school. So if we do that, that again is not bad, but it's a short-term solution because when we sponsor them for year one, they're in the classroom. That's what we wanted. We wanted them in the classroom. But year two, again, they're going to need us to help them, right? Because why? Because their economic situation has not changed. So us sponsoring them to go to school hasn't changed the fact that they're still poor. So they still are going to need money, right? So that's where we come in. That's how we decided to change this sponsorship model. So the sponsorship model has been in place for several years. And so we came in and we said, you know what, this is actually the culture of handouts that we're talking about. We can sponsor, but we can sponsor the right way. So what we do is we actually train the students to earn money, start small businesses while they're in school with us. So while they're in school with us, they're actually starting their own businesses. And they get training from different companies that we have partnerships with. They get training from university students on how to start a business, different skills. And because of this, they're actually buying their own school supplies, right? They're buying their own uniforms. They're actually creating wealth. So that is what changes poverty. So changing poverty wasn't going to be the backpacks that I delivered. Changing poverty was going to be the fact that they're learning a skill and they're earning money. So this is just pictures. So the first one was a garden that they started. So that was all the tools that they have. This is them making both bread. They've learned how to make vinegar, jams and jellies from the fruit trees. So they sell all these products, and they're earning money at the same time. And piñatas, they've made piñatas, sold those as well. So they're learning all these different skills. So it's not just that we're sponsoring them and giving them money to go to school and like, okay, good luck, be on your way. I hope you get better. I hope there's no poverty. No, right? That can't be the end of it. That can be one piece of it. I'm not saying it's bad to build a school and do all these things, but that is only a small part of what we really need to do. So in our example, when we sponsor a student, year one, yes, they're poor and they need our assistance. So we're going to support them. But as they go through high school, because of the different training programs that we offer them, this on the left-hand side is changing. They're earning money while going to school. And that's the whole purpose, right? You want them to be able to afford education independently on their own. So that's economic development, right? So that's economic development. And it's more than just being able to now have more cash in your pocket. It's, for a girl, the difference between getting married off to a much older guy or being able to stay in school and earn money for yourself and show your parents that education is worth it, because now they see that, wow, my daughter is earning money. Like, okay, like I can take her a little bit more seriously. Now I can see why education is sort of important. Okay, maybe I'm going to change my mind a little bit. So that all has something to do with it. So economic development goes way beyond just having more money. It actually is changing the minds of people in the community to support education more. So that's the breakdown here, right? So your economic empowerment, so for example, the girls who now don't have to go off and get married at 12 years old, they're empowered. Two is it changes the power dynamic that I was talking about, right? So the culture of handouts. So us as the donors, for example, donating things, so that relationship is often on balance because it's us just continuously giving to them and assuming that they don't have what it takes to do it on their own. And it's not like we mean to do that, right? Like it's just in our minds, we're giving people and we want to help, but if we continue to give and they receive and we give, then it just makes that relationship very unbalanced so that they're not able to do it for themselves. And that's what poverty is when you're fighting it from the inside out. So I started from the outside in, right? So I was the one coming from the outside, telling them what they needed, and then giving it to them. But now, Educate to Envision changes that because they fight poverty. We fight poverty from the inside out. So we train our young people as poverty-fighting experts, and they're the ones, and we just kind of stand by and say, oh, good job, because that's how it should be, right? We should be supporting them to do their own thing. So this is an example of what they're doing in their communities, beyond making money, which is great, but they're actually taking their education and they are changing the communities. So this is an example of Mother's Day in Honduras, in a small village that we work in, Pajarillos. And they came to us and they said, you know, the people who are ignored a lot are the older women, the widows, who don't have anybody visiting them. They're just people staying in their homes, nobody visits them, checks on them. Let's start a different program. Let's start a nutrition program for them. So they decided to celebrate them on Mother's Day and actually bring people, their teams, to the homes on a daily basis and check on the women. How are you doing? Do you need any medicine? Like, what can I do for you? So this is something they did all on their own. And they brought literacy to the community. So now they actually teach adults who never finished primary school how to read and write. So they teach adults, you know, their parents, how to help with homework for their siblings, because that's sometimes embarrassing that parents can't help their own kids with their homework because they don't know how to read and write. So they are changing that, and they go door to door, and they're actually teaching adults how to do this. And this is all their ideas, right? They are now empowered to come up with all of this. Okay, challenge time. So that was a mouthful, but what I'd like you guys to do, so all of that information that I just gave you about how to help, but how to help the right way, right? How to help a way that's more long-term and look beyond the tip of the iceberg. So I'm going to show you 2 photos, and I'd like you guys to just work with whoever's next to you. And what I want you to do first is come up with an observation. So pretend you're just walking in the room, like off the top of your head, okay, this is what I observe, right? So I observe like a bunch of really awesome, educated young people who want to change the world. So whatever that is, right? So I'm going to show you a picture, observations first, and then second, I'm going to ask you guys to come up with questions. Because for me, curiosity was the key. Curiosity is the reason that I'm standing here, is because I had questions. I wanted to know, why aren't they being educated? Why don't their parents support them? Why am I here doing this volunteer trip and nothing's changing? So ask yourself questions deeper than what you observe. So here's your first photo. And go ahead and spend maybe a couple minutes or so and come up with some observations first. Then we'll do questions. Did we do observations and questions or just observations? Observations? Okay, question part. All right, then 1 minute for questions part. So write down now what questions you want to know about this situation. So now you've done your observing, so you're investigating, right? So you're people who want to fight global poverty and you want to do it in the best way possible. So now it's your question part. So what do you want to know more about this photo before you think of a solution to this problem? Okay? So let's do like a minute for that. I want to hear from you guys first are your observations. So if I can have some people tell me, so you walked into this situation, let's say we're in Ghana, right? So I'm picking a country, and you're walking by this, I don't know, I'm gonna let you guys decide what this is. So you're walking by this scene, and what are we observing? Just visually, what are we seeing? Uh-huh.
A mother that can take care of the baby because she doesn't have the recourse, and I want to know if she has a husband that he helps her, or is she only go away and let her alone with the baby and
Okay.
take
That's really good. So we have an observation here that maybe this is a single parent. Maybe this is a mom by herself, and there is no father in the picture, and she had to come here by herself with her baby, and maybe the baby is not well, right? And she doesn't have the money or the resources to get care. So very good. So one observation, one question. Anybody else?
Me and Katia were talking about that maybe it's like a treatment center or something, like a camp,
Okay.
just because it's like on the top, it's talking about treatments and about how using the mosquito nets to protect the pregnant women.
Very good, right. So maybe we are in front of a health clinic, right? Maybe we're in front of a health clinic and she's there for treatment, diagnosis, whatever that may be. So maybe this is a medical related issue, okay, based on that sign. Good attention to the sign there. Uh-huh.
If it is a health clinic, why are the doors and windows closed?
Ah. Yes, good observation. So if she came to this health clinic, you would think that maybe she should be inside with a doctor, or maybe she should be attended to by somebody, but no, she's outside and it looks like it's closed, right? It kind of looks like it's closed. Good, that was really good. We got one more? Mm-hmm.
Maybe she was like rejected for some reason. Maybe because she has no money.
Okay, so maybe it is open, right? So maybe that's just how it looks all the time, but she just wasn't let in because she doesn't have the money. She was rejected, yeah?
And one more thing about what he said about it like being like her being a single parent.
Uh-huh.
Maybe she's not a single parent, but this is just like how their like roles in the family are. It's where it's like the father's supposed to be working and she's supposed to be here taking care of her children or her child.
Okay, so we could have a father in the picture, right? So we could, but it's just not his responsibility or it's not his duty to do this type of child care and that work, right? It's left to her to go ahead, and if our kid is sick, well, that's just up to you to fix it, right? Good, that's all. These are awesome ideas. So that's what I'm talking about. You guys are already like getting the hang of it, of looking beyond the surface, right? So we could have said, oh, she has nowhere to sleep, she's just there, she's homeless. But no, we're asking questions like, is she there for medical treatment? Why is she sitting outside? Is it because she was rejected for some reason? So in the back you brought up, so lack of money, maybe she was rejected because she couldn't pay for medication. Maybe she has HIV/AIDS and she's sitting there and she's stigmatized, right? So she has people around her maybe that are giving her, bad looks because they've heard about her, that she has a disease, and maybe she's sitting away from everybody else because for some reason she has a disease, nobody wants to be around her. And if you pay attention to what does her expression tell you? What kind of expression is that?
She looks really exhausted, like her child at the bottom, so maybe they might have had to travel like a long journey to get there.
Okay, yes. So let's think about that, right? So let's think about before she even arrived at this clinic, where did she come from? How far did it take her to get there? That's a lack of access to transportation, right? Or maybe she traveled all that way and she spent her money on transportation, but it was closed when she got there and she didn't know because there's no access to cell phone technology. There's no access to communication, so she didn't know that it was going to be closed.
Maybe it was the lack of supplies that they couldn't treat her.
So undersupplied clinics. So maybe that's a government issue. The government isn't restocking the supplies. And what's going to happen when people come there? They want something and it's all out. They need it, but it's all out. And if you pay attention 1 second for the sign, the people who notice the sign, so mosquito nets and preventative treatment are free for a certain segment of the population, right? Free for pregnant women. So if we can see in this photo, she doesn't look quite pregnant, does she? I mean, she might be, but she doesn't look in this photo. So what if she learned that they're not free for her, and she assumed that they were free, and she came there for a mosquito net, and to find out, well, you're not pregnant, so you have to pay. So these are just other things as well. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I see shame in her face.
Shame. Right, so that's another thing too, right? So connecting on that human level as well. So during our observations, we can notice a lot about people, right? So body language, everything, that also tells us something more. So really good, awesome job. So our last photo is this one here. Okay, so observations and questions. Okay, ready? So photo number 2. So now we are like super expert investigators when it comes to poverty. So let's look at this situation, right? So we're switching regions of the world now, and now we're looking at children. Okay, so what are our detective minds telling us right now?
They look like they're in a little bit of a healthier situation since like there's a car next to them and they have clothes.
Yeah.
But it also looks like they're selling something too.
Mm-hmm.
And a question I have is like, where are their parents?
Okay. Good observation, right? So we've switched not only countries and regions, but now we're in an urban area versus a rural area, right? So that's also going to have some effect on the poverty levels. And parents, okay? So lack of parents, I'm sure many of you noticed that.
Like again, there's a car, so that they maybe have access to transportation. Also,
Okay.
the streets are paved, so again,
Yeah.
it's like a more urbanized area.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so we noticed the vehicle behind as well. So paved roads. Yes?
They're exposing children to work at such a young age
Hmm.
and
mean, the sun, that's a high temperature.
Good, exactly, yeah. So we notice the age of these children, right? So they're not our age, they're not your age and my age. These are young toddlers, right? So what are the labor laws there? Do we know what the labor laws are? Uh-huh.
I really don't think that they are working for something that they want, but something for somebody else.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else put them to work.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. So not a voluntary decision, right? You were going to say?
I know that's
That was okay, not voluntary. Uh-huh.
Adding on to that, I think the person who's forcing them to do it is their parents. Because like the girl is like grabbing her little sister as if she's actually, like she's kind of acting like a motherly figure to the child.
Good
And
point.
maybe the parents are like, aren't responsible for them.
Very good point.
Use them.
Very good. That's wonderful. Sorry, in the back?
They could possibly like be wanting to help their family, like maybe their family has like they're really poor, so they want to help instead of just sitting around the house doing nothing. So they thought of doing this because they don't really look like sad or like upset about going out there. She's actually kind of smiling. And the baby is also giving out like the little snacks to people.
Okay. Yes? Uh-huh.
Adding on to what she just said, they don't look upset or anything. They look willing to be working.
Okay.
So I don't think that they really understand the circumstances that they're in. And I think like going on with that, I think maybe it is their parents who are like sending them out to go sell things, because as a person of like our age or like older, or you know, I think that it's easier to say no to an adult who's selling us these things, but seeing the little children and seeing the circumstances they are put in and how like they have to sell things in order to survive, it's much harder to say no to them selling us things.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Great. So I like that a lot. Sorry, one more?
Stigma that children that working is more important to education, because if you were educated, or at least like you can be competent in a community, you will be more able to get a job and get a better salary than working at such a young age, because if you get experience from education, you will be able to perform more difficult tasks later on and provide more money to the family. That's what I think the parents don't think as well, or they maybe thinking about the necessity of the money of that right mother.
Right, and that goes along with, so education, when you're in education, you're paying tuition, everything, paying for your supplies, you're making an investment, right? Because it's not going to pay off today. You're not going to all get, paid, $1 million for your work right now, right? You're working to that point so that you can have a successful living, so you can actually pay your bills, have a family, all of that, be able to cover expenses. But it's not going to happen today, and it's not going to happen in 3 years. It's a long-term investment. And so when you, exactly like you say, when you're in this situation, you need the money today. You can't wait 10 years for your education to pay off. But if you're able to do skills training, like we were talking about with what Education Vision does, then they're earning money while they go to school, and that's something that can take care of two different problems. So what I heard mentioned too here a lot was she looks happier, right? So she doesn't look as shameful or as sad as the woman in the last photo. And someone had mentioned too, maybe she doesn't know better, right? So that brings us also to maybe asking, well, where's the information to provide to this young girl? Like, can she understand child labor laws? Like, does she know that maybe this isn't legal in, maybe in this country, but let's just say, for example, that child labor is not legal, and maybe she just doesn't understand her rights. So part of poverty as well, right, is a lack of understanding your rights as a child labor worker, as a woman, as a farm labor worker. So maybe part of that as well. So you can see there's some political aspects that are also tied into this. Okay, good. So one last in the back. Yes?
Do you think also, like, there's kids that know the circumstances that are going on in their families, like their money
Yeah.
and everything, so kids are willing to help their family?
Yeah.
So as the kids know what's going on,
Right.
want to help.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very true as well, right? So sometimes you're raised in that culture, right? So you're raised knowing that you should help provide for your families. So that's something that, in talking to this girl, you would probably find out on your own, right? So, what do you know about what your rights are? What is your family situation? And you get to learn more by speaking to her. Good. Okay.
Great, thank you,
Question.
Katia.
Sure.
We will now begin the question and answer period. Just a reminder, students are for questions are for students only. So if there's any adults in the room, please let the students speak. Also, since this session is being recorded, just a reminder, don't state your name or school. Questions?
Uh-huh.
Is Honduras the only community that you've been to help out?
That's the only country that we're working in right now. Yeah. So we're the only organization in the whole country that's focused on high school in these rural areas. So we're planning to really stay there until we get the job done. Uh-huh.
How many years have you been doing it in Honduras?
5 years. 5 years, yeah. It's a long time. Uh-huh.
Is there a website or a way we can learn more about the program?
Yes, there is. I'm happy you asked. Good job. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was mentioning in the last session, actually. So as high school students, we actually are in the middle of opening a program, which is a virtual volunteer program. So right now, we don't bring volunteers over just because we really invest in our students to do a lot of the community work. So we don't bring volunteers over, but we have a virtual program where you can actually interact with our students in Honduras who are doing these different projects in the community, and you can actually share your skills. That's what we're all about, is sharing skills and not just things. So we actually have a program that can link high school students here to those abroad and actually share that experience. And actually doing that, you learn more about what the community problems are in their area by learning what they're working on. So that's something too. If you want your high school or your club to work with that program, then talk to me after.
How many students do you have enrolled in the program?
Right now we have about 250 from 9 different communities. So our goal is to, in each municipality that we work in, or you can call it a county, so in each county that we work in, our goal is to reach 100% access to high school in every municipality that we work in. So that's how we're kind of moving one municipality to each one until everyone actually has access to high school who live in these areas. Uh-huh.
Can we still volunteer, for the program you were talking about, with high school,
Yeah.
connecting to, with your other students? Can we still do that if we're about to go into college, in the near future?
Yeah. Yeah, so can you still volunteer even if you're about to graduate? So you can. So we can find some ways for you to actually, if there's a skill that you possess and there's something that you want to share with our students that can either improve their community service projects, improve their businesses, then that's what we really want to have is that skill sharing. So yes. So even if you're in college, you're not too old. Uh-huh.
Okay, so you mentioned the ways to help poverty that you can't touch.
Yes.
Okay, so as a young person, how can you inspire them to start a business?
Inspire our young people in Honduras?
Yes, exactly.
To start a business. Well, everyone is looking for employment, first of all, right? So lack of employment is huge, not only in Honduras, but all places in Latin America. So giving them that opportunity, they're actually looking for that. So they're looking for that to, one, support their family. That's the number one reason when we ask our students, so why do you want to go to school? What is the reason? Number one is to support my family. Number one, that's just hands down everything that we get, all the answers that we get are around supporting family, supporting community. And one way they do that is through earning that money. And so for these young people to have a skill that is not just taking care of children or not just cleaning, especially for girls, that right away is something that they've been wanting, but they didn't know how to access it. So they want to, from the beginning, to get these skills because it means that their family's going to be better off. So they want it, yeah.
All right, we're going to have to end there.
I think it's time, yeah.
So can we please do
Thank you.